What if I told you that the richest man who ever walked this earth wasn't Elon Musk, wasn't Jeff Bezos, wasn't Rockefeller, and not even the Roman emperors or the pharaohs of Egypt? No, the wealthiest man in history was a king from West Africa, a man whose fortune was so vast, so unimaginable, that when he traveled across continents, entire economies trembled beneath the weight of his generosity. A man whose story, though hidden in the sands of time, still whispers through the streets of Timbuktu, through the silent ruins of ancient mosques, and in the memory of a world that has forgotten his name. That man was Mansa Musa, Emperor of the Mali Empires. And if you're new here, before we set foot on this golden road, before we journey across deserts and kingdoms, I want you to do something powerful. Hit the subscribe button, tap the like, and ring the notification bell. Because every time you do, it inspires us to bring you deeper into the forgotten chapters of history stories so extraordinary they demand to be told. So, sit back. Imagine the desert winds brushing against your face. Imagine the golden sun sinking over the Niger River. Imagine walking through the gates of a kingdom where gold was so abundant, it seemed to pour from the very earth itself. This is the story of Mansa Musa, the Lion of Mali. To understand Mansa Musa, we must first step into the empire he inherited. The year was the early 14th century, 1312 to be exact. Mali was already vast, a land stitched together by trade routes that carried salt, ivory, and above all, gold. The empire stretched from the Atlantic coast through the savannas and into the Saharan desert, a realm larger than Western Europe. It was a land blessed with fertile fields, rivers that gave life to thousands, and mines that glittered with unimaginable wealth. Timbuktu, Gao, and Niani were not just towns, they were beating hearts of trade and scholarship. Merchants came from as far as Cairo, Venice, and even China to exchange silks, spices, and manuscripts. The camel caravans trudged across deserts, their bells echoing in the dry air, carrying not just goods, but ideas, faiths, and cultures. But Mali's throne was fragile. Dynasties in West Africa were not fixed in bloodlines the way Europe imagined them. To rule was to prove strength, wisdom, and legitimacy. Kings rose and fell with the favor of nobles, generals, and merchants. It was in this fragile balance that Musa rose. The rise of Musa. Musa was not the eldest son of a king. In fact, when opportunity came knocking, it came almost unexpectedly. The reigning emperor, Abu Bakr II, was a dreamer obsessed with the ocean. According to chronicles, he launched vast expeditions across the Atlantic, hoping to discover what lay beyond the horizon. On his final attempt, he vanished, never to return. And so, in 1312, Musa, a young man, deeply religious, intelligent, and ambitious, was chosen to inherit the throne. Imagine that moment. A desert wind blowing across the royal palace of Niani, courtiers whispering, soldiers bowing, merchants craning their necks to glimpse their new emperor. A man not yet tested by the fires of kingship, but destined to burn brighter than any before him. He was crowned Mansa Musa, the King of Kings, the Emir of Emirs, the Conqueror of Conquerors. But titles alone did not define him. Musa carried in his heart a devotion to his people, to his empire, and above all, to his faith. He was a Muslim king in a land where Islam had spread through merchants and scholars. And he saw Mali not just as an empire of gold, but as a beacon of faith and knowledge. Musa's vision. Unlike other rulers whose power came from fear or conquest, Musa believed in building a kingdom of prosperity. He fortified trade routes, encouraged scholars, and expanded Mali's reach. Cities swelled with life. Mosques rose from red earth. And universities opened their doors to scholars from across Africa and the Middle East. But Musa's most defining moment, the event that would etch his name into eternity, was not his coronation. It was not his wars of expansion. It was a journey, a pilgrimage, a trek across the burning Sahara, across hostile lands, into the very heart of the Islamic world. And when he made that journey, he shook the earth itself. But that part of the story, the pilgrimage that would turn gold into dust, that would make Mansa Musa a legend, feared and admired, that is yet to come. Stay with me, because we will walk beside Musa as he prepares to leave Mali, not just as a king, but as a living symbol of wealth and devotion. But Musa's journey, grand as it already sounds, was not just about gold, nor about armies, nor about trade routes stretching across deserts. It was about how one man in the span of a single reign could take a kingdom carved in dust and transform it into the beating heart of the medieval world. Let's breathe here. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. The year is 1312. The world is a chessboard of empires. Europe is stumbling out of the Middle Ages. The Mongol Empire still casts its long shadow across Asia. The Arabian Peninsula thrives under merchants and scholars. And deep in West Africa, often overlooked in old textbooks, lies Mali, a kingdom drenched not just in sunlight, but in unimaginable wealth. Musa inherited this world almost by accident. His predecessor, Abu Bakr II, had set sail westward across the Atlantic, determined to find what lay beyond the endless horizon of water. He never returned, and in that silence of vanished sails, Musa became emperor, a young man suddenly thrust into power, a ruler, not just of land, but of destinies. Now pause. Imagine the weight of that crown. The empire of Mali stretched farther than most imagine today, across what we know now as Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Niger, Guinea, Mauritania. Vast lands where rivers bled into fertile valleys, where caravans moved like serpents across the desert sands. Musa, sitting on the throne, realized he did not just rule an empire. He ruled over the very arteries of global trade. And what flowed through those arteries? Gold, salt, ivory, knowledge. In Musa's Mali, gold was not rare. Gold was abundant. The dust on traders' hands shimmered. The rivers that carved through the land carried flakes of it. Historians estimate that Mali was producing nearly half of the world's gold supply during his reign. Half of the world. Think about that. If today one nation controlled even a fraction of global oil, it would hold unimaginable leverage. Musa controlled the medieval world's oil gold, but he was not content with wealth alone. He was not content with gold sitting in the ground or in the vaults of his palace. No, Musa had vision. He wanted Mali to be remembered not just as a place of riches, but as a place of light, of learning, of faith, of culture. And so, in the year 1324, Musa embarked on a journey that would forever brand his name into the pages of history, the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj. Now, pause with me. This was not just a religious journey. This was spectacle. This was theater. This was Musa announcing to the world, I am here. My kingdom exists, and it is greater than you could ever imagine. He set out with 60,000 men. Yes, 60,000. Imagine a line of people stretching across the horizon. Soldiers, slaves, officials, heralds, and servants. They carried with them supplies, silks, and treasures. But most importantly, they carried gold. So much gold, in fact, that Musa's caravan became a moving sun across the desert. 100 camels carried gold alone, each loaded with hundreds of pounds. The sight of it was staggering. Wherever Musa passed, cities trembled. Crowds gathered. Merchants whispered. And kings who thought themselves rich felt small. Cairo. Ah, Cairo. When Musa reached Egypt, he left a mark so deep, historians are still in awe. He spent gold lavishly, handing it out to the poor, trading, gifting to rulers, financing mosques. He spent so much gold that he broke the economy. Yes, literally. Gold lost its value for nearly a decade. Musa had such wealth that by giving it away freely, he bent the rules of global trade. Imagine a billionaire today crashing the stock market, not by greed, but by generosity. That was Musa. But Musa's pilgrimage was more than a display of riches. It was a campaign of influence. He met scholars, architects, and artists. He hired some to return with him to Mali, and among them was one whose work would change Africa forever. Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, the Andalusian architect who designed mosques of breathtaking beauty. When Musa returned to Mali, he did not simply come back as a pilgrim. He returned as a king reborn. A king with vision sharpened. And he set to work. He built mosques in Gao, in Timbuktu. He established libraries. He turned Timbuktu into a city whose name became legend. To the outside world, Timbuktu meant mystery, treasure, knowledge. Musa funded scholars, imported books, spread the light of Islam. Under him, Timbuktu's Sankore University became a beacon of learning, drawing students and thinkers from across Africa and the Middle East. Pause here. Think about what wealth means. For most rulers, wealth meant palaces, jewels, wars. For Musa, wealth meant legacy. He wanted Mali to be remembered not just as a gold mine, but as a cradle of knowledge. He understood something few rulers ever do, that true wealth lies not in the glitter of metal, but in the endurance of culture. And yet, Musa himself became legend. So legendary that cartographers, those who drew the world, began sketching his face on maps. The Catalan Atlas of 1375 depicts him sitting on a throne, holding a golden orb, the very symbol of his empire's riches. To medieval Europe, Musa was not just a king, he was the king, the richest man alive. Okay, whispers spread of the African king whose generosity disrupted economies. It took years, some say more than a decade, for Cairo's economy to stabilize after Musa's visit. Think about that. A single man, through his wealth, could bend the rhythm of entire nations. Kings could wage wars, but Musa could change the very meaning of currency. And yet for all this, Musa was not reckless. His generosity was paired with vision. Upon his return to Mali, he poured resources into building mosques, universities, and libraries. The most famous of these was the Jingareber Mosque in Timbuktu, designed by architects he brought back from his pilgrimage. Its walls of mud and wood still stand today, a testament to how Musa's vision etched permanence in the desert sands. His patronage of learning turned Timbuktu into the Oxford of Africa, a place where students traveled across continents to study philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, law, and theology. Close your eyes and picture it. Courtyards filled with young scholars debating under the Saharan sun, manuscripts bound in leather, knowledge flowing like the Niger River itself. This was Musa's empire, not only a kingdom of gold, but a kingdom of ideas. He understood something profound. Wealth could dazzle, but knowledge could endure. And as Musa sat upon his throne, he must have known that his wealth, unmatched though it was but a tool to carve a name into eternity, a tool to ensure that Mali would not simply be remembered as a land of riches, but as a cradle of culture and enlightenment. But of course, history is not kind enough to let greatness stand unchallenged. The empire Musa built would, in time, fracture. Successors lacked his vision. Internal strife and external pressures gnawed at Mali's strength. Yet even as the empire's borders shrank, the legend of Mansa Musa only grew. Maps drawn in Europe depicted him holding a golden orb and scepter, a symbol not only of Africa's wealth, but of humanity's boundless capacity for prosperity. He became less a man, more a myth, his name whispered wherever wealth was discussed. And here, my friends, is where we return to the beginning. The richest man in history wasn't a tech billionaire, wasn't a titan of modern industry, wasn't a Wall Street magnate. It was a ruler from the golden sands of Mali, a man who walked humbly in faith but left footprints so large that centuries later, we still marvel. Mansa Musa, king, pilgrim, builder, scholar, giver. His story reminds us that true wealth is not merely what you hoard, but what you create, what you inspire, what you leave behind for others. So I ask you once more, if history could make a man like Mansa Musa, what stories are we still overlooking? What treasures of the past are yet to be told? Before we move forward, I want you to do something simple, yet powerful. If this story has sparked even a flicker of curiosity in you, if it made you see history not as dusty dates, but as living breath, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. Because your support doesn't just fuel us, it inspires us to dig deeper, to journey further, to uncover more hidden chapters of the human story that deserve to be told. Together, we can keep history alive, keep it burning brightly in an age too quick to forget. Now, take a deep breath with me. Let the story of Mansa Musa settle in your mind like grains of Saharan sand. Think about the journey, the wealth, the faith, the knowledge, and the legacy. And remember, history isn't just about the past. It's about us. It's about the world we're building today, the footprints we'll leave for tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, among us now, there walks another Mansa Musa, waiting for their story to be told.